Hello, this is Pauline Jennings. Welcome to Musician Talk. The sponsor for Musician Talk is here today to tell us about the solutions his company is providing for COVID-19 testing.
His name is Peter Schuster, and he is the president of Neuromix. Pete, tell us about Neuromix.
Pauline, I'm delighted to be here today to share my story with you and your radio audience. As far as Neuromix, we're a 16-year-old company. We were heavily involved in making cell-based assays and media. Because it's highly regulated, it was very easy for us to pivot and have the proper certifications to make virus transport media and COVID-19 testing kits.
Wonderful. Tell us more about that and how that works.
It's elegantly simple, Pauline. We make the media, and the media is designed to safely transport patient samples to sites for testing.
Who do you sell this to?
We sell it everywhere from a nursing home in Seattle to New York City. We just shipped out 2,000 kits to New Jersey today. We're as far north as International Falls, Minnesota. We sold to a hospital network up there, and we're south of the border.
Wow. So the work that you are doing at Neuromix is very, very important. Thank you for doing it. And how can people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about this product?
I can be reached at 612-801-1007. I usually don't give out my number, but we're better together. The other way people can find us is our website is neuromix.com.
Well, thank you so much for doing this work. Thank you for sponsoring Musician Talk, and thank you for joining me.
Today's interview is with Katerina Middledorp, who grew up in Northfield. She graduated from Northfield High School in 2011 and stayed here to get her Bachelor of Music degree at St. Olaf. She's a singer, a soprano to be more precise, and loves to use that voice in the theater. She was in high school and guild plays while living here, most recently as Hänsel in Fiddler on the Roof at the Guild. Currently, however, you'll find her in Boston, where she just finished her first year in the Vocal Performance Master's Degree program at Boston University. Kat has sung throughout the United States and Europe at the Westchester Summer Vocal Institute, the Collaborative Piano Institute, and Music in the Alps. Prior to COVID-19 outbreak, this summer she had a full slate of important performances, including Mother in Hänsel and Gretel, with the Berlin Opera Company. Impressive indeed. Kat loves to spend time, when not singing, with her husband Dave Flynn and her pets, many of them foster animals. In fact, you'll hear the cats playing in the background of this interview. So now let's talk to Kat Middledorp.
Hi, Kat.
Hello.
Now, when we were trying to set something up, you had to wait for your work schedule. So you are out working right now.
I am out working. Yeah. I got a part-time job when I was in grad school, working at a pet supply store in Boston. But now that it is summer, I'm basically working 40 hours a week full-time there. I had a couple of summer gigs come up and then they were all canceled. So now I'm, making money to help pay tuition.
Okay, so was there an interruption with COVID for your work?
No, because we sell dog food, we were considered essential.
Got it.
So corporate cut down the hours a little bit. So we're not there quite as long during the day. And then we do have a dog groomer on staff, and that was considered non-essential. So she was gone for about 2.5 months. Just started up again. So we've been seeing all sorts of dogs come in with some interesting homemade haircuts.
I have an interesting homemade haircut personally. So, but worse is the color. Trying to do my own color.
Yeah,
orange hair. So you mentioned Boston. You're working in Boston, and this is a local musician show. However, you grew up here and you went to college here. So you're really a local. You just happen to be living in Boston right now. Why are you in Boston?
Yeah, so I came out here in September to start my master's degree, Master of Music in Vocal Performance at Boston University.
Awesome. And what was that process like to get into Boston University?
So there's a whole audition process for really any Master of Music. And so I applied to 7 schools, fall of 2018. Oh, sorry, my cats are.
I was wondering what that noise was.
I've got 6 cats in the house right now because I'm fostering them, so they're making all sorts of noise. So I applied to 7 schools in fall of 2018. And then if they're interested in you after hearing the recorded audition you send in, then they ask for a live audition. So I was asked to do live auditions at 6 of the 7 schools.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And I ended up not doing one. So I did 5 live auditions, and they were every single weekend. So 2 schools were in Boston, so I was able to combine that trip, but it was 4 weekends in a row of flying out to different places. You go in and you have a list. Every single school kind of wants a different combination of languages or opera arias versus just like art songs, so classical pieces that weren't composed for an opera. And so I'd have, a different package to offer, and then I'd go in and I would sing one piece. And then the people there, which was usually a combination of the voice teachers there and then also like some administrative people as well. So then they would, ask for a second or maybe a third piece. And some of them did sort of like little interview portions as well. After that, I was accepted to 3 schools. And so sort of just like weighing my experience at the schools, and especially I did trial lessons with a lot of the voice teachers to see which voice teacher I felt, would challenge me, but also sort of like, vibed with me as well. Then also, a little bit based on scholarship and tuition and stuff. So yeah, settled on Boston University.
Well, that's exciting. There's a lot there for me to pick up on. But before I do that, I want to go back to, you grew up in Northfield.
I did.
From the time you said you were a year and a half years old?
Yep.
You were born where?
Amsterdam.
Well, that's interesting. And so you moved here, and you actually went to school with my daughter, Samantha, and that's how I know you from when you were little. Yep. And then I didn't know you for a while, and then now I know you again. So that's kind of exciting. So when did you start singing?
I mean, I was kind of always singing, would always sing along in the car. I remember my dad would like play different mixtapes, and I distinctly remember we had Across the Universe by the Beatles on there, and that was like my favorite song to sing along with in the car. I would always put on shows when I was a young kid and force my younger sister to like be in these shows with me. And we, just perform them for my parents. But yeah, singing it was a really huge part of my life. My parents actually met in a choir. My aunt and uncle both sang in St. Olaf choir.
So it's tradition. But also I wonder, do you remember how it made you feel to sing when you were little, or when you started to realize it did give you a certain feeling?
Right. I mean, I think for me, it was like the performing was always what was really fun. And like getting to be a different character. I would like come up with little dances, which is not my forte anymore. And then I remember I would come up with different costumes as well for the whole production that my parents got at dinner. That was, I think, what was really exciting to me.
So it made you feel excited. How did it lift you up? Or did it lift you up? Yeah.
Yeah. I think as a young kid, it was, getting that recognition from people was always fun when, people tell you good job. And then as I got older into like high school, I would say especially was when I, realized the power of like telling stories and how rewarding it could be if you've, changed someone in the audience and like brought them on this journey.
I agree 100%, and how powerful that can be, and the realization of the power that you have when you are performing.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think that that's just as strong if you're singing or in a role, or if you're not singing in the role.
Right.
However, there's something different bringing the voice into it as far as singing. And I feel that there is. And I'm wondering if you do, and what that difference is.
I guess it feels, to me, it's like there's a little bit something more like at the core of your body, I would say, especially when you have finished an especially difficult phrase, or maybe you have this like really glorious high note or something that, it really, you feel it, sort of inside, that rush that you get, adrenaline.
Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. That's what I want to pick up on, the musician side of acting in musical theater, and what that brings. Not that you can't get that rush as an actress otherwise, but there is something about music, as I keep discussing over these weeks with different musicians, about hitting the core of you and hitting your heart.
Yeah.
In a way that nothing really else that I've experienced can. And that's
Yeah.
what you were just describing. And the people in the audience feel it too, and they're
Mm-hmm.
exhilarated
Mm-hmm.
and they catch their breath, right? What role do you think or what song do you feel like you first had that awakening to that core thrill?
That's a great question. I think it was probably sometime in high school. I had a solo, I remember my sophomore year in choir. Yeah, I got to like sing it in front of a big audience. It was at our Christmas concert. I think Tomorrow Shall Be My Dancing Day. It was a Christmas song. And I feel like that was probably when I first remember that feeling.
Is that specific experience connected to making the decision that this is what you want to do for your life?
Not that specific one. No, it took me a while to like really decide to pursue this professionally. I think, there was a practical side of me that knew that making music is not, well, it's really hard to break in. And then also it's not always the most financially stable choice either. So for a long time, I actually was planning, I planned on going to St. Olaf to double major in music and biology and sort of do, some science thing as my main career and then just do music on the side. But then it was very quickly in my freshman year, I started realizing chemistry was fine and all that. I was taking a chemistry class that year, but music was where I was really happy. And like seeing some of the junior and senior performance majors and like watching, what they had accomplished and seeing their performances, I was like, you know what? I want to do that. And I think I can do that. So that was kind of when I made that decision, was freshman year of college.
That's a big decision to make. I understand.
Yeah.
It's so risky.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Yes. And now looking back on that, how are you viewing that decision?
Yeah. I mean, it was absolutely the right decision. There's certainly still that question of financial stability, especially right now when all of, all the opera houses, musical theater, Broadway, they're all shut down. Like we can't do performing right now. And who knows when it'll get back to the way it used to be or if it ever will. And I think there's also a question of, do we want it to be exactly the way it was before? Or is this a time for change?
When I do these interviews, I ask the musicians to send me a couple songs or to do the songs live. When I asked you to send those, I asked you to send 2 that were important to you. But before we even get into the song, I want to discuss opera a little bit with you.
Yeah.
Because I think that's probably one of the genres that our audience is not very familiar with. At least I'm not, because you don't hear it on the radio. You have to be very specifically looking for that if you want to listen to it. So just give us a little tutorial on opera.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I think of opera is really quite similar to the way I think of musical theater. They're both performances with singing. It's just a different style of singing. Musical theater, I mean, the tradition we have today was built out of opera. So opera is basically, classical singing and telling a story through classical singing. It was originally Italian was the language that they had. And so a lot of operas you'll hear are in Italian. Even if the composers weren't from Italy, they still would write in Italian because that's just what was expected. Mozart, actually, which Porgy Moore is from, his first operas were all in Italian, as was standard. And then eventually his later operas he wrote in German, which was his language since he lived in Austria. And so now kind of the major opera languages are Italian, German, French, and English are the 4 languages that we sing in. And those are the ones that opera singers are expected to, have a handle of how to pronounce them. But opera can be in any language, there's Russian opera, there's Czech opera, there's Chinese, Spanish opera, but at the core of it is really telling a story through music.
I'm wondering about also the difference in when you say classically trained or classical, different from musical theater music, and the way that you sing it. What are those differences?
Yeah. So we get like super technical into it. And it has some stuff to do with the shape of your mouth. Your larynx itself is in a slightly different position. It's lower in your neck as opposed to higher, which is what pop and musical theater, modern contemporary musical theater require. Sure. And then your soft palate, which is the roof of your mouth and the back of your mouth. When you're singing opera, you want it to be nice and lifted to create this nice round sound. And that's true of more classic musical theater, like think Rodgers and Hammerstein or Sondheim, whereas contemporary music and contemporary musical theater, it's more of a flat, soft palette, and they require that belt sound, and that's not something that we do in opera. Yeah, it's a different style of singing, and it requires, kind of a different way you use your body.
Exactly. And I think that that's so fascinating, particularly for people who aren't singers, that it's actually a physical difference.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a stylized difference. It's actually physically you sing. I cannot sing opera personally. I've never been able to master changing my mouth in that way and having the airflow come through my nose. I sing all from my neck, which is not good. And that's why I probably have, I get hoarse all the time. Right? No, shouldn't do that. But that opera, you actually use your mouth and your throat differently than you do for pop music. And so this sets it up as this listener is going to listen to you sing this way. And you can listen for those things. And also there's differences in how you sing vowels, as I understand it, and consonants too. You keep that air moving. You don't really stop anything.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's set up now. Porgi Amor. Why don't you go ahead and tell us why you picked that song?
Yeah, so Porgi Amor is from Le Nozze di Figaro, or Marriage of Figaro, which is a Mozart opera, one of his more popular ones, one of his more famous ones, Marriage of Figaro. And so this is the Countess's aria, and she's basically just like lamenting the fact that her husband, no longer loves her. They were so happy together at one point, and now he's off, being a philandering husband. That's what's going on here.
That's what's going on. Why do you love it?
Why do I love it? Mozart in general, he was brilliant, and he changed opera. His pieces are deceivingly difficult. Because I'm like, oh yeah, I can follow that line, makes sense. And then you try to sing it and it's like, oh wow, this is really hard even for opera. It's a challenge. It's really beautiful music. For a long time, I was singing mezzo soprano, which is like the lower of the two treble voices. And then I always kind of felt like that wasn't quite the right fit. And so I ended up switching to a teacher at one point, and I was like, I think I'm actually a soprano. And this was one of the first pieces that we played around with when I was, making that voice change. And it was also one of those that reminded me like, oh yeah, this is definitely where I'm fitting. This makes sense for my voice.
Awesome. That's a great setup. Okay, so now let's listen. that was beautiful, absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
And it's so wonderful to hear that this was a pivotal song in your musical career, in your vocal career. Did you use this song as an audition piece for college?
Yes. So this was in my audition package going into graduate degree auditions. And then I actually used it this past season as well for the opera auditions I did. And I'm currently actually working on some other Mozart pieces. It's pretty much considered essential that you have to have a Mozart piece in your audition package. And so I'm kind of phasing this one out and working on some other ones now, which is exciting and also challenging because like I said, Mozart is not easy. And so I find myself just like sitting at the piano, just, plunking through notes, running through passages, making sure my brain remembers everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's some muscle memory there too, once you do get it.
Absolutely.
You were talking about during COVID that opera houses aren't open.
Right.
You had a full slate of shows that you were doing this summer. Why don't you explain those to us?
Yeah. So I had 3 shows actually canceled on me. First one was our spring show at BU this year. So BU is interesting in that in addition to having a master's program, they also have something called the Opera Institute, which is for students that are post-grads. So they already have their master's degrees and then they come in and they're paid a small stipend and they get to perform leads in the operas. And so us master's students, our first year in our master's, we usually just sing in the chorus. So I was going to be singing in the chorus for Clemenza di Tito, which is another Mozart opera, but I also had the opportunity to cover the lead, Vitalia, which is really exciting for me. Not a lot of first years get to do covering work, and, it's another Mozart role that I'd love to sing someday. Plus the 2 women that were singing it, are these both incredible vocalists, and they're both, about 30 or so. So it gives me a sense of where I'll be in, the next 4 years. So that was really exciting. And I learned the whole role. We had our very first rehearsal, and actually one of the 2 Vitalias was out that day. So I even got to stand in and sing a little bit. And then we went on spring break and school was moved online and the show was canceled. So that was the first one. And then this summer I was going to go to Bulgaria. I would actually be there right now and sing the role of Antonia in Le Conte Hoffmann. And then in August, I was going to be going to Berlin to do Hänsel and Gretel.
Wow.
And I was going to be singing the mother. That one, it's a really fun role. She's only really there at the very beginning and the very end of the show. But it's a great smaller role that I'll probably be doing a whole lot. And so it was still great that I learned the role. I got it under my belt. That one was also canceled.
That's so disappointing. Let's go back now. Now, musician talk, I like to talk about why music matters and how it has affected your life and your relationships.
I think the big thing, like I was saying earlier, is really the chance to explore different characters. And so that's always really fun. I've played and will play some crazy characters that are absolutely nothing like me, which is, kind of fun to explore a side that's very different from me. And then also...
Wait, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Why is that fun to explore?
I think everybody has a little evil side that they don't actually, express, obviously. But we're all humans. We're very multifaceted. None of us are 100% good. For example, Vitalia, the role that I was going to be singing this spring at BU, she plans the murder of an emperor. But then it also, I think there's the challenge of, how do I make this 100% evil character? How do I make them human?
And it allows you to be a little bit maybe more expressive in a way that you aren't in life because you're not evil and you don't let the evil dogs out.
Right. 100%. Mm-hmm.
Right. How has it affected your relationships?
Personally, I met my husband while doing a musical theater production of Into the Woods. A lot of my closest friends I also met in theater. In high school, I would spend 5-6 hours a day after school every day with all these people, working hard, creating a story together. And so most of my best friends are people I've met doing theater, doing opera. Working on a show together is very different from working in an office together, and it builds these deep relationships that you wouldn't necessarily get in a different workplace. I mean, you have to be so trusting with these people. You know, a lot of times you're asked, you know, to have very intimate scenes with them, or, you know, big duels with them, and you have to trust your partner. You know, you're bringing this story to life to affect people, and so it's a very different workspace than just, you know, working in an office together. And it builds much deeper relationships, I've found.
Do you find that trust that you have to have in theater and in music quite often, that translates into other areas of your life?
I don't always like everyone that I work with. I would say I like the majority of the people I work with, but there are certainly singers and actors out there that I don't get along with. And yet I still have to have this trust. And it's much more than, you know, say, oh, I don't like the person sitting next to me in a cubicle, you know, oh, I can just ignore them. It teaches people how to get along with others a lot better than, you know, maybe normal life prepares you for. I mean, it also, opera it teaches you so much stuff, you know, like even just like showing up on time, for example. If you don't show up on time, you're not in the show anymore. It's never just about you. It's always a team effort.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that it's not always about you. It's a team effort. And I also love that you have to trust somebody even if you don't like them. Yep. And how important that is to bring that into your life outside of theater and outside of music. That's beautiful, Kat. We're kind of running out of time here, so I want you to set up the second song that we're going to play for the audience. It's called Somehow I Never Could Believe. Please.
Yeah, so this is it's a piece by Kurt Weill, who was writing in the mid-1900s. And what I love about this and Kurt Weill's music in general is that it's very much a mix of musical theater and opera. It has some, I mean, you'll hear it in the music too. There's some like sort of jazzy elements. It doesn't sound at all like the Mozart that we listened to earlier. It allows me to, you know, still use my operatic voice, what I've been trained in, but it brings in a lot of that musical theater elements that I love so much.
That's neat. This is Somehow I Never Could Believe, sung by Kat Middledorp. Well, Kat, what another beautiful, wonderful song. And thank you for sharing that with me. And I think we're out of time. So I want to thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And I look forward to when you come back to Northfield and do a role here so we can all see you again.
I'd love that.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you to Neuromix for the good work that they're doing out there for COVID-19 testing. Thank you to Pete Schuster, the owner of Neuromix. And thank you, audience, for being here. And you have a great evening.